Okay, everybody, welcome back. We're going to do another pivot table in here, but this is going to be a somewhat more complicated one. What we want to do is, let's say, we want to determine if credit limit is associated with age in any way. That is, do older people have higher credit limits, or do younger people have higher credit limits? We'd like to determine that, and we're going to group these in a pivot table. Okay, so I'm going to get myself another pivot table by going to Insert, Pivot Table, and select Pivot Chart. That way you'll get both of them. It guesses about the range. This is correct. So we'll create our pivot chart here. Okay, now what do we need? Well, we definitely need their credit limit. Their age plays a role in this too. And we also want to count the customers that fit into each of these categories. So we have to have some way of counting the customers, and each customer has a unique customer ID, so I'm going to add that field as well. Now, this chart doesn't make any sense. I agree right now. We have to move some of these things around. Okay, first of all, what are the axes on this chart? We're mapping, if you recall, their credit limits against their ages. So you should be thinking, one of the axes is going to be the age. Okay, so I'm going to take this one and slide it over here. And now notice we do have a pivot table. It's not correct yet, but the ages are showing up here on the left. I want to map that against their credit limits. So I'm going to pull this up here, and this will become the legend for the credit limits. Okay? And finally down here we have the sum of customer ID. Again, this is the only one with arithmetic being performed on it, but it's not a sum, it's simply a count. Okay, so I got to do this again. Hit Value Field Settings and select Count Customer IDs as opposed to adding that up. That makes no sense. Okay, now we actually have a count here, but it's kind of awkward. Look at it. Do you understand what these numbers mean? Like, look right here. This 1, 300 mapped against 30. What does that mean? That means there was one 30-year-old in this list that had a credit limit of 300. Choose any other number. 750 against 39. Okay, there's two 39-year-olds with a credit limit of $750. Fine, all these numbers are true. The thing is, well, I think they're true, but the thing is, it sure doesn't make a very good chart, does it? I mean, look at that slop. So what we'd like to do is, we'd like to group some of these data items together. Alright, so the way we do that, here, just click on this 200 over here, one of these column headings, and here under Pivot Table Tools, under Options, you have a group selection under here in the group family. Select that. Click on that. And here you can specify a starting value and how to increment them. So instead of starting it at 200, I'm going to start it at 0. And instead of ending at 7,500, let's end it at 8,000. And keep it in increments of 1,000. So click OK. There. And immediately you can see that some things have been grouped together. 0 to 999. All these categories up here. Still, not the prettiest chart you've ever seen, but better looking than it was. Okay. Now we can group along the ages too, because now right here we have each individual age that appears. We don't want that. We want to group them. So select this age right up here at the top, and again go to pivot tables, options, group selection. We can start the age of the person at 0 and end it at, oh, I don't know, 80, and group it in increments of 10. When I click OK, there we go. Now we're starting to see something that we can play with. Okay. Actually, this chart still doesn't look very good, but I just have to drag it out so it looks less disgusting. Okay. There. Now that's something we can kind of make sense out of, because we're not looking at every individual data item and where it would appear, but groups of items that are put together, and from that we get some more meaningful counts instead of counts of 1 and 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2. Now we have larger numbers, and so the disparity in these bars is more clear to make out. Okay, so does there seem to be some kind of relationship between age and credit limit? Well, for me, it doesn't look like older people necessarily have higher credit limits. It doesn't look like younger people have higher credit limits either. All that I can gather from this chart is that most people in every age group have a pretty low credit limit. For example, most of the people in every age group seem to have a credit limit between $0 and $999. Okay, and we do see some occurrences of higher credit limits, but beyond this point, up in the higher than that, 2,000 and higher, we see rare occurrences of them, no matter what their age is. So my decision on this would be, well, there really doesn't seem to be much of a relationship between age and credit limit, at least not in this study. Okay, so here we have our slightly less complicated pivot table and chart. I hope